Welcome to FYIVT, your inside source for news and in-depth analysis on what's really happening in Vermont. We want to start by saying thank you to all our listeners and supporters. Your continued encouragement fuels our mission to dig deeper and bring light to critical issues that shape our communities. We couldn't do this without you. Today, we're diving into our article titled, Great Moments in Scientific Consensus. In today's world, we often hear about the so-called scientific consensus. It's used as a tool to push ideas like in the climate change debate. But here's the thing. Science isn't about consensus. It's about questioning, testing, and when necessary, challenging what we think we know. Think about it. Science is supposed to be a process of inquiry, observing, experimenting, and refining. It thrives when people ask tough questions and challenge the majority view. So, when did scientific consensus become the hammer to silence debate? Let's be real, saying most scientists agree doesn't prove the science is right. What it proves is that a lot of people have bought into a particular idea, but history shows us how often the majority has been wrong. And not just a little wrong, spectacularly wrong. For example, centuries ago, the scientific consensus said the Earth was the center of the universe. Everyone believed it. Philosophers, scientists, and the church. But then Copernicus and later Galileo dared to question this view. Galileo, even with evidence on his side, was condemned and placed under house arrest for life. Consensus nearly crushed the truth. And what about eugenics? Not so long ago, it was mainstream science. Intellectuals and scientists insisted we could improve humanity by sterilizing the so-called unfit. That belief led to forced sterilizations in the United States and inspired the horrors of Nazi Germany. A scientific consensus, no matter how widespread, doesn't guarantee moral or factual correctness. Now let's look at the miasma theory. For centuries, doctors thought diseases like cholera came from bad air. This consensus delayed the adoption of germ theory, which ultimately transformed medicine. Again, the majority had it wrong. Why does this matter today? Because we're watching the same dynamic unfold in real time. The term scientific consensus is being wielded like a weapon, especially in climate change debates. Ask a question, challenge the narrative, or even suggest alternative solutions, and you risk being branded as anti-science. Does that sound like science to you? Or does it sound more like dogma? The problem isn't just about being wrong. It's about how outside pressures, political, social, and financial, can steer the direction of science. And that's dangerous. Science can only work when it's free from coercion. But is it free today? Take climate science. Scientists who deviate from the mainstream narrative often face intense backlash. They're labeled deniers or outliers. Their funding can dry up. Their reputations can take a hit. Is that how we encourage innovation? By silencing those who dare to think differently? Dr. Judith Curry knows this all too well. She's a former professor of climatology at Georgia Tech and one of the scientists who helped kick off the modern climate change discussion. Her work on hurricanes and climate sparked concerns about extreme weather. But over time, she became uneasy with how the science was being politicized. Curry began to speak out. She criticized the tribal nature of climate science, where the focus shifted from understanding uncertainties to messaging and shutting down skeptics. She left academia, frustrated with the way politics and peer pressure were influencing what was supposed to be an open field of inquiry. And let's not forget the ClimateGate scandal. In 2009, leaked emails from prominent climate scientists revealed discussions about manipulating data, omitting inconvenient results, and crafting a narrative to bolster the consensus. One email even mentioned a trick to hide the decline in global temperatures. Whether you think the emails were misinterpreted or not, ClimateGate shook public trust in climate science. It highlighted how easily science can become entangled with politics and agendas. Are we seeing the results of pure scientific inquiry? Or are we seeing data shaped to fit a story? And here's another question. How much of this so-called consensus is real? How many scientists genuinely agree, and how many are just going along to avoid professional consequences? If scientists are pressured to conform, can we really call it a consensus at all? Now think about how this dynamic plays out in your own neighborhood. Have you ever felt ostracized for holding a different opinion? Disagree with the crowd, and you might find yourself cut off, not just from conversations, but from entire communities. If it's happening in science, It's no wonder it's happening among neighbors, too. When consensus drives public policy, the stakes are even higher. Policies based on shaky or unchallenged science can lead to disastrous outcomes. For instance, many governments are spending billions, sometimes trillions, on aggressive carbon reduction strategies. But are those the best solutions? Or are they just the most politically convenient ones? Bjorn Lomborg, a Danish environmental economist, argues that the current focus on carbon reduction might be misguided. He suggests that instead of pouring money into expensive and often ineffective policies, we should invest in adaptation strategies, things like building better infrastructure and developing cleaner technologies. Lomborg's approach might not fit the consensus, but does that make it any less valid? Shouldn't we explore all options before committing vast resources, especially when those resources come from taxpayers, people like you and me? And here's the kicker. It's not just science that thrives on skepticism. Communities do too. When we allow open inquiry and respect different perspectives, we're stronger. But when we shut people out, whether they're scientists, neighbors, or friends, we weaken the very fabric of society. Think about it. How many relationships have been strained because of a disagreement on politics or policy? How often do people avoid tough conversations for fear of being ostracized? That's not the hallmark of a free society. That's dogma. Science and communities both thrive on open inquiry, not consensus or conformity. Consensus can sometimes reflect a well-supported position, but it should never be used to silence alternative viewpoints. History is full of examples where consensus was wrong, and we should remember that every time we're told to follow the science. So here's the challenge. The next time you hear about a scientific consensus, ask questions. What's the evidence? Who benefits from this narrative? What's being left out? And most importantly, are dissenting voices being heard? The public deserves the full story, not just the majority opinion. Neighbors deserve the same respect in their conversations. When we question, when we engage, and when we respect each other's right to disagree, that's when we're truly doing justice to the spirit of science and to the values of a free society. Freedom is the foundation of prosperity. Stay informed, stay vocal, and most importantly, stay free. Thank you for listening to this episode of FYIVT. To read the full article and explore more on what's happening in Vermont and how the state works, visit us at FYIVT.com. We appreciate your support and look forward to continuing to bring you important perspectives on Vermont's most pressing issues. Until next time.